Welcome back to another episode of Comic Wars. Tonight is the final the final matchup of round 2 in our matchups this season. The final matchup consists of the Intergalactic Sportsman. He's an alien, but regardless, this is a hunter. Intergalactic type. The Predator, as he takes on his opponent, the hungry virus, Alex Mercer from Prototype. Tonight is not necessarily about the hunt per se, but at the same time, it's more about who's gonna keep going. And going. That's really where this is going to kind of go. Now, tonight is a very special episode because tonight these are two very, very powerful characters. In fact, both of them are some of the most powerful ones we've actually had on the show yet. But who's going to really take the crown on round 2 here out of these two? Who's moving on to round 3? And who's going to be left behind in the dust? Well, let's find out. So first things first, let's get into the overview. As usual, if we had a guest, this is where we would do the introductions. This is where we'd start bringing them up, talking to them, find out what they think, who wins and why. Same thing for you guys. If you guys are in the chat, make sure to go and hit us up in the chat or down below in the comments, and we'll get back to you on that. We'll try and figure out why you guys think that and why. Just get a little responses on this. And then after that, we get into the background details. This is where we start covering things like psychological profiling. We start looking at their height, their weight, their age, experience, what their occupation is, where they're generally hanging around at. They're just their area of operation. After that, then we get into the feats. This is where we start calculating out their strength, durability, speed and agility, martial prowess, ingenuity, maybe their weapons and or gadgets, and powers. We start really just nailing things down. This is what they bring to the fight. And this isn't necessarily going to be the data analysis, but more often than not, this is where the next category, it also kind of just blends right on in. After that, with the data analysis, really all we do there, that's just breaking it down. For instance, this guy can punch through concrete. Well, how much force does that take? And then we try to translate as best as possible so that way people can see, oh, okay, so this guy's got maybe he hits harder and this is why, or this guy lifts more and this is why. After that, then we get into the character pros and cons. This is essentially like an early breakdown of kind of how they compare to each other and how they compare to themselves. Do they hold themselves back, or is this going to be a big boost for themselves? How certain things kind of blend in. More often than not, what do we see? We see things like background. That's the thing that usually blends over in these other categories. Why? Because you have height and weight. You also have personality traits that also can show what their kind of a bloodlust would look like. So you can kind of see how they're going to react to things. Because not everybody's going to just black out essentially and just go just full on monster mode. That's not just generally how it works. But that's how I kind of like to cover it. So, and then after that, we of course get into the guest analysis. We try to find out from you guys too, who wins and why. And, maybe you guys have a change of heart. Maybe you guys are thinking, okay, well, I don't think this guy's going to win anymore. And this is why. This is what they're bringing to the fights. This is why I think they're going to go and lose. But this is why I think they're going to win. All right. And then after that, then we get into the outcome. This is where we just break down who wins and why. It's pretty straightforward. A lot of the characters, we have to go over scenarios. This has been a season where the scenarios are actually a lot more important than just saying, okay, well, who wins and why? Well, they're going to just come into a draw, or there's areas where it's not going to make much sense. Who wins and why? There's too many debatable areas, too many variables that can be like, okay, well, this is a toss-up. you have too many toss-ups, you have to explore scenarios. Even if there's one toss-up, it's good to explore the scenario. So you never know. Maybe a character pulls ahead because of that scenario. But what pulls them ahead, and we try to show as much proof as possible. And then, of course, after that, there's the preview for the following episode. So you guys will be very excited for next week's. Next week's going to be a very interesting one. All right, well, let's get into our first combatant. The Predator. This is the interesting part. He's a Disney character. Interesting, because they bought out Fox. So this is how we get Predator. When it comes to these guys, this is a race, okay? This is a species. These are Yatja, so this is basically how their species is raised. They all become hunters, assassins, things like this. I mean, but more or less they're just hunters. So, but we're just going to be using just the generic one right here. So we don't really have a name or an age because their ages also differ. They can get much older than us as well. So. As for his height, well, this one is 7 feet tall, and it weighs approximately 520 pounds. Once again, they're game hunters. That is their big thing. They actually have planets where that's all they do. They'll go and bring their game there because they want to hunt them there. As their area of operation, well, they're universal. Anywhere in the universe they can go. As for their personality, well, they're brutal. I mean, I'm very, very brutal. We'll get into it in a second. They're also highly intelligent, incredibly inventive, but yet they're prideful and honorable. So you're going to see there's some interesting qualities to these things. These creatures they're absolute just monsters in battle, but at the same time, they also have a code. So it's interesting to see, especially because these are generally villainous type characters, but they're just there for the sport. They're not there for world domination, universe domination, nothing like that. They're just there for the sport. Little tidbit about it, well, this alien species lives for the thrill of big game hunting, and this is strictly all they do. So it's not really a tidbit, that's them. So, all right, well, let's start getting to their feats. Their feats are where the interesting parts come in. So when it comes to this thing's strength, well, it's capable of ripping opponent's head and spine out, all attached, mind you. Which, with the math, you can look at it takes about 1 million newtons, which is equivalent to 101 plus tons of force. So that should tell you this thing is incredibly strong. So their muscle density is going to be pretty ridiculous. So it's not that they're going to be armored or anything like this, but like they're durable. That's the one inconsistent part about them in the movies is they show like gunfire be able to just go right into them real easy. The muscle density would be outrageous, so bullets just piercing would be very. I would call shenanigans there on that alone, but it's also capable of ripping open steel doors just right off the hinges, just boom, it's just like that, no problem. As for durability, well, they're resistant to diseases and radiation. They've also got an extreme, very, very high to extreme level of pain tolerance. This thing has tanked gunshot wounds and continued to run. So that should tell you something about this. Like I said, shenanigans though, because the durability really, when it comes down to their muscle density, I mean, for how strong they are, I would be saying the gunshot wound's probably not gonna happen. So unless it's like armor piercing rounds, but I digress. As for speed and agility, well, it casually keeps up with speeding vehicles. Keep in mind that's 70 plus mile an hour vehicles speeding, right? So that's pretty quick. And that's just casually doing, not actively like rushing them down. But they can also move faster than the human eyes can track, which this comes down to more of their agility. So the human eyes track at about 550 miles an hour, so anything faster than that, and this thing moves faster than that, so it's at least 550 miles an hour. As for their combat capabilities, they're highly trained martial artists. I mean, like, we're talking, like, they're raised from birth to fight, and when it comes down to it, they are weapon masters. You name a weapon, they can use it perfectly. at least the proficient hunters that go out. And as that's the thing, that comes down to the ranking. You can always tell who the better hunter is by their ranking, because the highest ranking officials, like the elders and things like this, they're the best hunters because that's all they do. They hunt. So the more proficient the hunter, the higher the ranking. So taking on an elder would not be a very wise idea for most, but for this case, this isn't an elder. This is just your average hunter. Okay. As for its ingenuity, well, it's known to disable opponents via traps and ranged weaponry. They also stay cloaked majority of the time, and then they kind of just watch their opponent for a bit, get a feeling, then they kind of just start just letting off traps and just taking them off one by one. They also like to throw human voices, very, very much kind of like a Wendigo does. If you guys are not familiar with the Wendigo, there's just lore on it, but basically they're known to essentially mimic human voices and other animal voices and things like this. Make it seem like they're farther away, somebody calling for help, things like this. Predator does this very, very proficiently. But the problem is the hunter, these predator hunters, typically it's somebody that was fighting the predator, and most of the time these people, this is generally what you see. It's usually somebody that was caught up fighting the predator, presumed dead. People don't seem to catch on. They're like, oh, he's crying for help, let's go and save him. No, you're going toe-to-toe with the predator. You're probably not making it out alive. But it does tend to catch opponents off guard, so. As for the... Oh, I did leave the creeper there. Whoopsies. Alright, well, this is for the predator, not the creeper. His powers: he comes equipped with superhuman strength and enhanced senses. This guy literally sees in infrared. So, he can... I mean, they can see and all this, but they've got their helmet on, and then once their helmet comes off, they see differently. So, it's hard to say because some of these predators, they see slightly different. The older ones, you go back, the more primitive ones, things like this, they're the ones they don't see quite the same way. With their helmet on, things like this. So it's really hard to tell what their helmet's going to have, but generally it's infrared. Their superhuman strength, as you've already seen, you can even argue superhuman speed pretty easily. As for their weapons, they come equipped with gauntlet blades, as you can see in the image above. Their shoulder plasma caster, which is up on the right shoulder, which you can see up there as well. Sometimes they show it on the left. It's kind of one of those toss-ups. Depends on the movie and the media you're taking in. But it can be left or right. The coma stick, which is also, I believe that's it on the right leg there. On its right leg. And which is basically, it's like a spear type of like bow staff thing. And it compacts into something really small. So think kind of like a expandable bow staff, but it's like highly durable. Like it can hold severe amounts of weight. Like we're talking huge amounts of weight. But it's typically thrown. He also comes equipped with the smart disc, which is essentially, it's kind of like, think like a drone, like a controllable little like buzzsaw that flies through the air. Yeah, it's kind of nifty. And it also has the net gun, which it has a net that once it latches onto something, it continually crushes. And it's razor sharp, so this starts to really start cutting in, and it can just literally just obliterate somebody in a short amount of time. But this is usually used to just immobilize somebody for a time being, so that way they can just finish them off later. They use them as traps. The people themselves become traps. So there is no vehicle or spaceship in this, because once again, it was only for the creeper match, because they start with their vehicles no matter what. That's how that's going to go. So as for the gadgets, well, the Predator also comes with a cloaking device, as we've mentioned before, a self-destruct device when dying, which is equivalent of like a super nuke basically. This thing blows up and it'll take out a good chunk of change of land with it, so you got to be able to move out of the blast, because even when he's dying, if it's given a chance, it'll set this thing off and go boom. And it also has a charge emitter. So That should tell you something. This thing is also known for like screwing with electronics as well, so keep that in mind. Let's get on to its opponent, though. Alex Mercer, Activision character. They're the ones that own the rights. But as for what this thing was codenamed, this is not actually Alex Mercer. It only looks like the scientist Alex Mercer. Its actual codename is Zeus. At time of death, Alex was 29 years old, and this is the form they took. He was trying to expose what this company was doing and this virus that they were creating. And it was a prototype. It was only in its prototype form, but it was essentially world-ending. And they wanted to go and basically he wanted to expose this. But also at the time of his death, he was 5'10" tall, and he's 190 pounds. Keep in mind, this is the virus. This is not Alex Mercer. It just took on his liking. So it maintains this, but it can adjust as well. Its occupation, it at first believed it was the former head researcher at Gentech. It's just, well, the hive mind. It's the one in charge. And its area of operation is New York City, New York. As for its personality, well, it's sociopathic, it's paranoid, and it has a superiority complex. It doesn't care as much really about anything. Very, very little does it care about, and you can argue it's not really caring. It thought it was love, but it really wasn't. But it is incredibly paranoid because, well, when you're on the run constantly because things are trying to kill you, I mean, this makes sense, but it also has a superiority complex because it does believe it is superior to humans as a whole. And even other viruses of the same strain, or of different strain, well, same strain but different variety of it, it will try to consume and control, which it has a few times. Little tidbits about it was the Blacklight virus, which believed itself to be the real Alex Mercer, but found out later that it was not. What he's bringing to the fight is now we're looking at mid-tier superhuman strength. He easily broke down a 2-foot thick steel door, which takes about 83,180,000 pounds of pushing force. It's technically speaking very, very much superhuman, but it's the amount of force needed to do that. It's debatable whether he's on par with, or will Predator's on par with him perfectly there or not. He easily threw a car at a helicopter. That takes quite a bit of force as well. Easily lifts and throws tanks at long range. For durability, well, tanks being blown up by missiles pretty often, actually. He's tanked being nuked. Literally vaporized him until basically very, very little was left, and he still came back. Extreme heat resistance, cold resistance. He's got disease immunity completely. Resistance to mind manipulation, radiation resistance, extreme biological manipulation resistance, and he also has soul manipulation immunity since, well, it doesn't have a soul. Speed and agility, well, it's mid-tier superhuman level, easily outruns helicopter gunfire, easily reacts to M1 Abrams tank shells being fired at him, literally catches them and dodges them. So that should say something. As for combat capabilities, he was a skilled martial artist due to absorbing opponents' memories and DNA. And that's the great thing about this thing. It's this thing, it absorbs any kind of biological material. And what does it do? It now gets the memories. So now it gets anything, like, let's say, for instance, this thing were to go and absorb Batman, it literally becomes Batman plus these powers. How terrifying is that? It's going to have other issues because the memories can go and collide with other memories. So it kind of changes how this thing thinks. But overall, it's got this general kind of personality it likes to maintain. And these memories, it usually just takes the best of them just for training purposes and then equips himself with basically those. Everything else is trashed. Has them, but doesn't utilize them as, okay, this is my main source code, essentially. No, it's like this is all separate. I'm going to take these, hook these up to me, so I've got these skills, but everything else is going to be kind of just, if I need to go in, kind of like a library, think of it that way. As for ingenuity, well, it's technically, it's a highly intelligent scientist. That's where it all started. He's absorbed several scientists since then and has gained even more intelligence, especially after absorbing soldiers and other viruses and all this. So it's gained a number of different strategies and all this, so it's incredibly intelligent. Now for the powers, there's a long list. So you have technically mid to upper tier superhuman level strength, enhanced senses, thermal vision, mid to fast regeneration, depends on what happened. It can shapeshift into anything biological. I believe he can shapeshift, if I'm not mistaken, into things that are inorganic as well. Power mimicry and absorption, so yes, anything it kills, it can absorb their powers as well. Biological and disease manipulation, so if somebody's got a disease or something like this, they can literally absorb, or it can manipulate those things. As for the distance on this, it's very unclear, but I believe it has to be like right up on them. It can also, it's very, very adaptable. It's incredibly adaptable to most situations. And it's also got a thing called reactive evolution, which means you beat it this way. Think like Doomsday. You beat it this way one time, probably not going to be able to beat it that way again. Just because it basically builds up durability to those types of scenarios and attacks. He's capable of flight. Matter manipulation, literally can manipulate matter. I don't know how else to describe it. That literally manipulates it. Sonar and radar immunity, he's not picked up by it. Mind manipulation, he can literally manipulate others' minds. Generally speaking, this goes along with the hive mind type thing, so if he infects them with the virus, he can technically just manipulate them until it just wipes them out. He's also got gravity manipulation. He can create little miniature black holes. Telepathy, he's got blacklight creature summoning. Literally can summon these creatures from anywhere. He's also got limited precognition, so he can kind of see what's going on for the most part, but it's limited, so he can only see so far. And even then, some of the details might be a little fuzzy. He's also got power bestowal, so he can literally give people or other creatures, these blacklight creatures, he can give them some of his power, so they can take half his power. Now they've got half his power. However, summons some of these creatures. Couldn't they hypothetically try to take over? Yes, but no, because he's separate and he's the dominant strain, so they're not gonna be able to. It's also got madness manipulation. This only affects those infected by the black light and the red light viruses. So if he infects somebody, like for instance his opponent tonight, he could manipulate their madness and doing God knows what only. It's also got limited invulnerability, so that's kind of a difficult one, because if he gets hurt enough, he can actually go into almost kind of like an invulnerable state, and then he can tank something and it won't hurt him for a short time. As for his powers, he's also got vibration manipulation, energy manipulation, tendril creation. Yes, that kind of like Venom. He can create tendrils. Spike creation, same thing, like the tendrils, just creates spikes. He's also got biomass explosive devastator, which is essentially he can detonate the biomass. You can just throw it out there kind of like a grenade, if you will. And he's also got a laser vision, which is up there with the likes of Superman, I'll put it that way. But it's different. His power source is way different. As for his weaknesses, okay, so this is a few things we want to go note here. Electricity will lock him in place. Okay, that's the big thing here. But he also needs biomass. If he doesn't have biomass as he's going, it does drain him and he becomes weaker and weaker. And he also can't swim. So this should give you a little tidbits about that. So we don't need to go over the data because the data has already been explained. Okay, we're going to go over a couple things here when it comes to data analysis, and that is strictly going to be strength feats. So we know 1 million newtons. That's what it takes to just rip off somebody's head and their spine out clean. You look at this though. This is going to be just the capable. This is ripping. Okay, it's going to be your pull strength. So let's go ahead and take a look at his strength. You're looking at 83 times that. And that's pushing. This is a 2-inch steel door. Ripping open steel doors. They're the same, basically. You got one that's got the pulling strength of over 1 million. You know, and do any cars weigh over 100 tons? Nope. So is he capable of doing the same feats? Yup. So these two characters, strength-wise, are pretty similar. I just want to go and get that out there. Comes to speed and agility, looking 70 plus miles an hour, plus an up agility of 550 miles an hour. Be able to, technically speaking, can actually move at this rate to be able to do this. And then you look at speed and agility over here. Outruns helicopter gunfire. That's not out of line of sight. So just keeping these things in check here. Just really wanted to go and make those things notable. But who do you guys think wins tonight? Do you guys think it's Alex Mercer? Or do you guys think it's the Predator? I'll give you guys until 9:34, which should be about 30 seconds to a minute or so. So who are you guys thinking? Does Predator take this? Or does Alex? I'll tell you, I'm actually shocked at what I'm already seeing here. And I'll explain. So tonight, we're not even going to have to go over pros and cons. We've already gone over them. You can see these guys are pretty evenly matched in a lot of ways, but others are kind of more or less different. Okay, so when it comes to background, Alex Mercer he's a hungry virus. He just wants to go and bring more to his hive. That's all it is. And then you've got a big game hunter. So who takes it psychologically? One's just hungry, and they're very, very calculating, but they're hungry. The other one is just killing for sport. So as psychological profile, these guys are going to be kind of like immovable object versus unstoppable force. They're going to be kind of just going at it. They're going to go do a whole game of tug of war, and really when it comes down to personality-wise, there's not going to be any huge advantage here. Because they're both going to be thinking to outsmart each other. And they're both more than capable. However, now, this is where things, like I said, they kind of blend over a little bit. When it comes down to it, psychologically, Predator has a lot more time to do this than Alex Mercer does. So that's where that comes in handy. So really, when it comes down to it psychologically, it comes down to time, which Predator would totally have that. However, when it comes to height and weight, Alex Mercer can adjust his height and weight. So when it comes to range and things like this, Alex Mercer can get to that range real easy. So when it comes down to this, we're going to actually have to say this is a draw. Because Predator's going to be able to outthink him, and he's going to have limited time. Where he'll have more time than Alex, but Alex can just adjust and just go big or go home kind of thing. And that's when Predator's not going to be able to, that time's not going to matter so much. Okay? When it comes to strength, this is the interesting part. They're basically a draw. I can't find too much really showing that Alex Mercer takes this, and I can't find anything really saying necessarily that Predator takes this. But we know that their maximum capable strength is roughly around the same. So really, more or less, who's going to go and get this? Strength-wise, they're a draw. And if anybody does happen to find anything on top of this, please let me know. We can always rehash this next season, but if nobody brings it up by the end of the season or before next season, please let me know. If you don't, then this isn't going to get rehashed. So, but this one's actually very interesting because this one could, in a lot of ways, go either way. When it comes to durability, this is where Alex just takes it. He tanks nukes. Predator can't. And it's pretty significant. When it comes to speed and agility, well, let's break it down. If it'll load up. If you look at it, speed, he can move up to 70+ miles an hour. Okay, and on top of that, he can also move up to 550 miles an hour. As for how long, I mean, once again, it's alive, so it's going to only have a limited amount of time. It can run for a long time, too. So, but who's really moving faster? Well, this guy, he's not faster. M1 Abrams tank shells being fired, they don't hit that 550. Like, well, they technically can move faster, but we also know that he was also at a distance, which means he had time to process this. Not much, but he had time, which means technically speaking, he was able to move or outrun it. But he's not. But it's at a distance. So if it's at a distance, this kind of increases reaction time, which means therefore he's not really moving at a pace like this. And we know that the Predator outruns gunfire all the time. He moves past 550 miles an hour. Yeah, he's moving faster. So therefore, Predator gets it. But it's not a huge gain here. It's really, they're pretty close. When it comes to martial prowess, now this is the interesting part. He's skilled. Alex is skilled, but he's not a master. And he also doesn't have the experience. There we go. End of the day, this is going to go to Predator. And it's not by much, because end of the day, what can Alex do? Just absorb more, becomes more and more skilled. Like I said earlier, if he were to absorb Batman, he now gains all of his fighting capabilities. Now you throw that in with him, he's going to be a lot more of a threat than Predator ever was. Because they're not to that tier of Batman levels, like martial arts capabilities. No, not even close. So that should show something right there, right? As for ingenuity, you got one that likes to lay traps and plan ahead, while this other one likes to go and basically he's smart enough. He's got plenty of strategies, military strategies, which once again, they're going to be ones that their capabilities are more or less limited. And we don't know how many he's absorbed by the end of the first game, how many soldiers and all this. So when it comes down to their tactics and all this, it's going to come down to experience. And who's going to have the experience. Plus, at the end of the very first prototype, that's the thing. Alex still, there was that virus still had that connection to Alex's sister. I believe it was his sister or girlfriend. But he had that attachment that it caught him off guard. He actually thought that was his sister and all this. And so throwing a human voice could totally catch him off guard. Technically speaking, it should technically be able to. Not to mention it's hungry. It's going to be looking for more biomass. So hearing that voice somewhere else could throw it off. Plus, on top of that, he's cloaked at all times. I mean, that's where you have to start looking at these feats over here. He's got enhanced senses. He's got thermal vision, which is great, because this is where it's going to come in handy. Is that cloaking going to work? Nope. So that cloaking doesn't work. Powers are going to get into this a little bit. So in ingenuity-wise, it comes down to what's going to be more effective, the powers or the gadgets. So when it comes down to ingenuity, Alex he can use his head. He can use that big brain of his all those big brains he's absorbed to think scientifically, while the Predator's going to be thinking strategically and more, like, how do I catch my prey and destroy it? It's going to be a draw. Because Predator's going to be able to outthink a lot of these things and set traps in a lot of ways. Like I said, this is where it can kind of go either way, because when it comes down to the powers, be able to use these powers. Well, actually, I take it back. No, he's got telepathy. Totally forgot about that one. Telepathy, yeah, no, he's got that. Alex has got that just by a little, though. So I actually have to switch that up. After that, we get weapons and gadgets. Well, Alex doesn't have anything. End of the day, he does not come with any weapons. Can he use weapons in the game? I believe so, yes. But end of the day, does anybody need the weapons when he's got powers like this? No, he is the weapon. These are more powerful weapons. So let's take a look. What does the Predator bring in? Oof, that plasma caster is going to be coming in handy. Some of these things can come in a lot of handy here. A charge emitter, you can lock Alex in place, but with the telepathy, is that going to be enough? When it comes to weapons and gadgets, this is going to definitely provide an edge. We know the Predator doesn't have any, he doesn't have any powers, but he has weapons and gadgets. So he has some things that are going to have an edge here. But how's it going to do up against Alex's powers? You got things like gravity manipulation. Well, is the Predator going to be fast enough to avoid that? And that's only a short little burst of it. Matter manipulation,